Hi everyone. In this video, I'm going to show you a new skill by revisiting some old projects. In the new skill is using layer masks. A layer mask is just a way that you can tell Photoshop where, sort of what areas of a layer you want to be visible and not visible, or how much of it you want to be visible. And You've actually been using them a little bit, and maybe you didn't realize it. I talked a little bit about it, but I didn't get too much into the details. I said that was for later. Well, now it's later. So an example of where you might have actually seen layer masks before was when you used adjustment layers. So when you used adjustment layers, when you would create a new adjustment layer, let me just back up a little bit on this one. Let's say I wanted to make a selection of this flower. I'll just make a very bad selection of this flower. And when I click hue saturation adjustment and I choose what color I want it to be, what Photopea is doing right here, let me delete my old one here. What Photopea is doing, this flower adjustment, is it's actually applying a layer mask to this adjustment layer. So there's an adjustment layer that applies that adjustment across the whole layer, but then you mask that layer so that only parts of that layer have an effect. So if you look at this little thumbnail image, the black part of the little thumbnail image shows where the effect is not happening. So you'll notice that nothing else outside of, you can kind of see in the little thumbnail image, you can see there's a little patch of white where the flower would be, and you can see that there's a larger black area where there is no effect. It's not where the flower is. That was the area outside of my selection. So what this mask is doing is it's telling Photopea, apply this hue saturation adjustment only in the areas that are white on the mask, that the mask labels sort of visible with white, and don't apply it in areas that the mask labels invisible with black. You can also use various shades of gray. The darker it is, the more visible it is, but kind of not getting into that quite yet. For now, it's just important to note that a layer mask, tells Photoshop or Photopea what parts of a layer should be visible. Black is invisible, white is visible. So the nice thing about this though is that it's a non-destructive edit. Remember I mentioned before, destructive edits change the original pixels. Non-destructive edits don't, and you can just go back and you can sort of make adjustments to it as you want because your changes aren't permanent. Well, if I want to make some changes to this mask, what I can do is make sure I have the mask selected, not just the whole layer. Like if I select the whole layer, it doesn't affect the mask until I click on the little thumbnail image. So I'll choose the flower. I'll click on the little thumbnail image. And what I have to do is I have to paint in with a paintbrush black where I want to get rid of the effect and white where I want the effect to be. So if I have a black brush, I'll make the brush larger. And I can actually remove all this like sort of weird green that's on the outside, because it's a place where where the adjustment was applying, because my selection in the beginning wasn't very good. On purpose, I wanted to make some mistakes so you could see this. And then if there's spots that I missed, I can flip this around. Wherever I paint white, notice what it's doing is it's changing the mask. It's adding white to those areas of the mask. And so it's letting that come through. Whatever is painted white in the mask shows through. Whatever's painted, that effect is visible. Whatever's painted black in the mask, that effect is invisible. So I just fill in all the spots in the flower, white where I want the hue saturation adjustment to be. So your task for the rest of this is to adjust all of these masks. Go to the car adjustment. You'll notice that there's a whole bunch of extra purple and not just the purple car. The chair adjustment, missed part of the chair. The eye adjustment is just a rectangle. Make sure you fill in white. Make sure I'm using the right thing. Make sure I have the right adjustment layer. Here we go. Fill in white. In the mask, remember you have to have the mask active. You have to click on the little thumbnail image of the mask. Fill in white. Where you want the effect to show. Fill in black where you want the effect to be invisible. And then another case where you could use layer masks to do something that we might have done a different way in the past is something like the melon head assignment. So in this case, if you had an image just superimposed on another image, like we did in the past, we used the eraser tool, you can do that, but you can also apply a layer mask by clicking this little icon that kind of just looks like a black dot on a white page. Notice it added an extra thumbnail image here. That's a mask. Right now there's nothing on it. This is a layer mask that's all white, which means all visible. But I can start adding invisible spots by painting it black. So I can make my foreground color black and just start masking away anything that I want to be invisible. And I can, if I miss a spot, or if I make a mistake, I can always fix it, because layer masks are non-destructive edits. So you can always just go back and edit your mask. So I'll just take big chunks of this away. I'll make my brush smaller. Take smaller pieces of this away. And if there are any spots where maybe not enough of this is showing through, I can just get a white brush. I'll go even smaller with this brush. And actually use white to add it back, because remember, white is visible, black is invisible. So I'm just actually adding visibility here. And when I'm done with that, I can arrange it just like I did before. And so the second thing I'm going to ask you to do is to just make a really simple melon head. Remember, when you're editing your masks, if you're editing layer masks, make sure you sort of deselect the layer mask, like just choose a different content layer before you go and try to add something else, or else it will actually add. I just added some random picture to my layer mask before. I don't really want that to be there. I'll repaste. Okay. Yeah, make sure you deselect the layer mask before you go adding new things. So that's why I just said deselected layer mask, and then I added layer 3. And I'll go back to masking. And so what I'm going to ask you to do is to make just a simple, a sort of simple redo of the melon head photo collage. This time you'll only be required to have four different masked selections of foods. Make sure that you actually use a layer mask though. Actually use a layer mask. Don't do it the old way. The whole point, you'll notice that like you could probably, if you got really good at using something like the lasso tool or the magnetic lasso tool, you might actually be able to do this more easily with those tools. But the whole point of this is to practice using layer masks. So make sure you do this with layer masks instead of doing it the old way. Just want to make sure you're actually practicing the new skill, not the old skills. So first, step one is edit your layer masks on the old color adjustment example, just with a few of these, with a few of the old colors, the color hue saturation adjustment examples in the starter that I gave you. Make sure you use the starter. I'm going to give you a starter. Make sure you use the starter with the sort of bad, the bad selections that I start you with, and then make a simple version of the melon head with just 4 masked selections.